to do some protection, and the contract is out to get that done. The problem is that this flood of 2016 set a new high water mark. So we need a bigger solution where these communities have been flooded so many times. Number one, we need a FEMA decision. We need an EPA decision because this subdivision was built on a dump. There's a federal law that prohibits subdivision being done on dumps, but that law was written after that subdivision had gone in. Is there a solution that the EPA and that part of the federal government can help us with? And then we need exceptions to the current insurance policies. You heard in conversation here, many of the residents live on their retirement pay or on government assistance. It's hard to pay $2,500 a year on flood insurance, or in some cases, $1,500 a month flood insurance if you're living on government assistance or you're living at the poverty level. And many of the members of the community that live in that subdivision are at the poverty level. They can't afford the federal flood insurance program that as it's laid out. And if they can't afford it, they can't get the insurance. Yet, we have to articulate to the governor and to FEMA that if people can't afford it and they own their home, and FEMA come back and say you are non-compliant and we're not going to help you, that these people are victim of being poor. And we're a nation that have to have a rule that don't penalize people because they are poor. There are many reasons why these people are poor, but to deny them a benefit because they couldn't afford the insurance is morally wrong. And we must appeal to our politicians to step up and be creative and find grants that can help these people.
You were instrumental in getting the governor out here last night. What were his takeaways? What did he tell you after touring that devastation back there?
I would pretty much have to defer. I was not here when the governor was on the ground, but from the words I got from the president and the police jury, it was a positive visit. The governor now understands the dilemma that we have here in New Roads. When people from afar look at New Roads, they think about Falls River. They say, oh, well, the water just run right into the river. But there's a backside to New Road, and the backside of New Road is to the levee. And the water that is in that part of New Road want to go to the Mississippi River. The levee that we put in to protect us from flooding prevent that water from going through. So there are certainly engineering solutions. We need the best engineering solution. We've asked the Corps of Engineers, and they're on the way. There are mitigation solutions, and we've asked FEMA. They put a vehicle here today that's stationed here permanently in town for the time being to try and address people's needs for requesting for assistance from FEMA. We've asked the Red Cross. They've come in and they're going to start feeding food and circulate. And the mayor's office is going to coordinate so people can get their homes cleared. That's the immediate action. The long-term action is how do we get a long-term mitigation or relocation plan, and that's the job of the federal government to figure it out. But the poor people here can't afford the levels of insurance that the burden is far exceed their ability to pay.
Last question that I have, and I know Scotty probably has some after this, is why are you so passionate about helping these people here in Point G?
Well, I was quite busy in Baton Rouge until one of the citizens here who I knew a relative. I went to high school here. I gotta admit, that's my roots. And when I went to high school at Roosevelt High School, the area behind the school was a dump. And when we would play in the backyard at physical training, you could see the smoke from that dump. I graduated from high school in '66, and in 1972 or '73, the Clean Air Act passed, which prohibited dumps burning in open burning. So they closed that dump because of federal law. It was followed up, and they ended up putting a subdivision on it around that same time. Those are consequential events. People at that time probably thought if you put dirt on it, it was good. We now know that's different. So I'm connected to this parish. This is my roots. This is where I learned how to read. This is where I learned history. This is where I learned the importance of my culture and what it means to be a part of a community. And this is where I learned how government works, right in this building, in this courthouse. So this is personal to me as a soldier, and now as a member of this great state of Louisiana, living back here, that we answer to the sound of people wanting help. And this came in a respectful way, and I know the people here, or I know their relatives, and it wasn't a question of when I go and how quick I could get here. You can't say no to your hometown.
Thank you.
Part of the conversation today was about just that misconception that people have about flood insurance and people here in Louisiana. As more people kind of look at this and latch on to this message, why is it so important to get that part of the conversation out there?
Well, I think it's two things. The federal government has laid out a plan that they think is acceptable to everybody. It's acceptable to everybody if you don't live in the poverty, 2 times the poverty level. You understand? This program doesn't work for people who live in poverty. It doesn't work as well for people who rent. It doesn't work for people who inherited their parents' home. They got a secure home to live in, but they can't afford the flood insurance. The big thing in Louisiana, we've got a tax exemption. So we don't pay that much in tax, but we end up paying exorbitant amount for flood insurance. And if you live anywhere in Louisiana, just about anywhere can flood, because we got the mighty Mississippi run through right in the middle of the most populated part of the state. So everybody should have flood insurance. The question is, if you can't afford it, we're going to have an exception to this, because when the national reporters say, well, only 1 out of 8 people have flood insurance, it's like, it's their own fault. It's not their own fault if you're the second poorest state and your people can't afford the flood insurance. If the flood insurance is $1,500 a month or more, how can you afford that if you're poor? And that is an issue we've got to bring to the federal government, that this is not a program that's fair to the poor. If you want to end that, end poverty, and then we won't have that problem.
What can you say to those people that'll watch this and say that, I desperately need help? What can you say to them in terms of short-term goals and long-term goals?
We need them to maintain their hope. We need them to stay engaged. Right here in New Roads, we have a center that's being set up around Rosenwald pad in the back of town, near where the flooding happened. You'll see a vehicle there with FEMA name on it. Go there. We have centralized services there. The local government is represented there. The local government, under the sheriff's emergency powers, are going to put in some emergency work order requests to try and stop any follow-up to any floods that might happen because of 2 or 3 inches of rain that might happen in the weeks coming. People are scared. And then we're going to coordinate for cleanup of their homes, as well as ask for exceptions to the state of some of the qualifications for the shelter in place and for help from FEMA. Because if you inherited mom's home and you're living in it and you are making a minimum wage and you're at the poverty level, you can't afford $400 or $500 or $600 a month flood insurance. In that case, you'd be paying flood insurance, but you're not eating. And I don't think that was the intent of the Congress of the United States, that would put poor people in a position where you either pay your flood insurance or you don't have a car or you don't eat or you don't have electricity. And that is a statement we've got to say to the federal government. Nice try, not good enough.
Perfect. Thank you.